March 4, 2022. It was the dead of night in a quiet town tucked away in the northern reaches of Utah. On the outskirts of town sat a large home that looked almost abandoned, except for one faint light flickering from a second-story window. At 3:22 a.m., an emergency dispatcher received a panicked call from a woman struggling to speak through broken breaths. She said her husband had stopped breathing. Paramedics were immediately dispatched to 282 Willow Court. The incident was initially categorized as a medical emergency, an unconscious male. Within 8 minutes, the ambulance arrived. Inside the master bedroom near the foot of the bed, first responders found a 39-year-old man unresponsive. Music, his body was cold. And there was no pulse. Despite every effort to revive him, music, was pronounced dead at 3:36 a.m. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place. The room was clean. No visible signs of a struggle, no signs of aggressive behavior. The initial report indicated a possible sudden cardiac event. No one that night could have imagined this case would unravel into a high-profile criminal investigation. Behind what appeared to be a natural death lay a meticulously orchestrated crime. Commas is the kind of place where folks know each other's names. Music, a town of just 2,500. Where life revolves around the local church, a handful of stores, and where gossip moves faster than traffic. People don't usually lock their doors here. And the family living on Willow Court, they were deeply respected in the community. Eric Richins, the man found that night, ran a successful construction company known throughout the region. He had a reputation as a hardworking, reliable professional, a man's man who enjoyed hunting and never hesitated to help out a friend. His wife, Cory Richins, was a well-known real estate agent selling high-end homes in Park City. She was seen as a go-getter, sharp, music, and incredibly driven. From the outside, the Richins family looked like the American dream. 3 kids, financial security, a cozy home in a quiet neighborhood. Friends often pointed to them as an example of what a good life should look like. No one suspected anything was wrong. But behind the carefully curated image were secrets, big ones. And for years, those secrets never left the walls of their home. That was about to change. The piece in commas would be music shattered when the truth about what really happened that night began to surface. Eric Richins was Utah-born and raised. He came into the world in 1982, the son of Gene and Linda Richins, and grew up in Bountiful. From a young age, Eric was no stranger to hard work. Working on the family ranch taught him discipline, responsibility, and grit, traits that would later define his career. He earned his degree in construction management and business from the University of Utah. But Eric wasn't one to music take orders. He didn't join a big company. Instead, he built his own. Specializing in stonework, his firm gained a strong reputation because Eric personally oversaw every project. He wasn't afraid to roll up his sleeves and get his hands dirty. Outside of business, Eric had a deep passion for hunting. He went on trips to Mexico, Canada, even Africa, bringing back trophies that lined the walls of his office. Friends and coworkers described him as loyal, honest, and someone you could count on no matter what. But Eric's journey hadn't been without heartbreak. In 2011, he lost his first wife, Julie, in a tragic car accident. That loss hit him hard. He pulled back from the world, burying himself in work, and it took a long time for him to open up again. 2 years after the tragic loss of his first wife, Eric Richins met Cory Richins, a driven woman with a background in healthcare. Though she originally earned her degree in human resources management and worked in the medical field, Cory eventually pivoted to real estate. The two married in 2013, and before long, they were raising 3 sons together. Eric's family life became his top priority. No matter how demanding his schedule was, he made it a point to be home for dinner. Financially, things seemed solid. Eric, music, believed in structure, order, and planning. He was meticulous, someone who double-checked everything. So when he passed, suddenly those who knew him were left with more questions than answers. Cory, also a Utah native, began to feel that a traditional administrative career wouldn't bring her the income she wanted. In the early 2000s, she explored the world of entrepreneurship, starting with a cleaning business and eventually launching a high-end real estate agency called Cory Richins Really. She focused her efforts on luxury properties in Park City, hoping to build a real estate empire. Unlike Eric, Sy wasn't afraid of debt or high-stakes investments. She believed that to win big, you had to risk big. Eric, on the other hand, was conservative with money. He preferred to burn first, spend later. Over time, that fundamental difference in mindset led to serious tension. The conflict escalated when Eric uncovered significant financial irregularities. Without his knowledge, over $200,000 had vanished from their accounts and large loans had been taken out against their home. For a man who trusted those closest to him, this discovery felt like a deep betrayal. Meanwhile, Cory's social media painted a much different music picture. One of dream homes, smiling faces, and luxurious living. But behind the curated posts were mounting debts, unpaid bills, and financial chaos. The breaking point came when Cory pushed to buy a $2 million mansion in Park City. Eric firmly refused. He knew that deal would collapse everything they had worked for. That disagreement wasn't just another argument. It marked the end of their relationship as they knew it, and the beginning of a devastating chain of events. By the end of 2021, their marriage was unraveling. Music. The financial deception had fractured the trust between them, and soon strange and disturbing incidents began to unfold. Incidents that Eric started to see not just as accidents, but as threats to his life. The first major red flag came during a trip to Greece. After drinking something Cory had prepared, Eric became violently ill, weak, nauseous, and barely able to stand. Local music. Doctors chalked it up to food poisoning. But Eric later told friends and family he wasn't convinced it was just a coincidence. Then came Valentine's Day 2022. Cory made him a sandwich. As soon as Eric took a bite, he began to feel numb and had trouble breathing. Thankfully, he had an epinephrine pen on him, something he carried due to severe allergies, and that likely saved his life. That incident changed everything. Eric confided in his sister and his business partner, telling them point blank he believed Cory was trying to poison him. Despite serious suspicions, Eric made the difficult decision not to go to law enforcement. Music. He was worried about the emotional toll it might take on his sons, and he still held out hope of preserving what was left of the family for their sake. But behind the scenes, Eric began making quiet preparations for a separation. He rewrote his will and updated his life insurance policies, music, removing Cory entirely as a beneficiary. He also revoked the power of attorney she once held over his financial accounts. In the final weeks of his life, Eric seemed distant, nervous. He avoided conversations about the future and started pulling away emotionally and physically. Yet, music, he continued. Living under the same roof, doing what he could to protect his boys. March 3, 2022 began like any other Thursday. That evening, Cory told friends they were celebrating the purchase of a new home in Park City, an upscale property worth around $2 million. In truth, Eric had been strongly opposed to the purchase. He saw it as a reckless financial decision. Still, he agreed to spend the evening at home. According to Cory, music, it was a quiet night. She told investigators she'd made Eric his favorite drink, a Moscow Mule. The two reportedly spent time talking in their bedroom, discussing business and family matters. Later, she claimed she left the room to check on one of their sons who'd had a nightmare. She said she accidentally fell asleep in his room. Around 3 a.m., she woke up and returned to the master bedroom only to find Eric lying on the floor, unresponsive. Emergency responders rushed to the home after Cory contacted rescue services. But it was too late. Eric was declared deceased at the scene. At first glance, everything pointed to a sudden cardiac arrest. Cory remained calm and consistent in her statements. She insisted the night had been a tragic accident, nothing more than a family celebration gone wrong. At first, authorities had no reason to doubt her version of events. But everything changed when the medical examiner's report came in. The autopsy results told a different story. Eric Richins, a healthy 39-year-old man with no known heart issues, had a deadly amount of fentanyl in his system, a synthetic substance far more powerful than morphine. Fentanyl is used in controlled settings for pain management. But the amount found in Eric's bloodstream was more than 5 times the lethal limit. There was no chance of survival. Further forensic testing revealed that this wasn't pharmaceutical Grade fentanyl. It had the chemical profile of illicitly manufactured street grade product, ruling out the possibility of a prescription error or accidental ingestion. The toxicology team determined that the substance had entered Eric's body orally, music likely mixed into food or drink. Considering that the last thing Eric had consumed was a cocktail made by his wife, investigators now had a clear direction. The effects of the substance would have been almost immediate. Medical examiners concluded that within minutes of taking a sip, Eric would have lost consciousness. The fentanyl acted fast, shutting down his respiratory system and leading to cardiac arrest. All while he lay in his own bed. There were no signs of a struggle, no signs he ever even had a chance to call for help. Detectives began meticulously piecing together the final months of Eric Richins' life. Background checks across all databases confirmed one thing. Eric had no history of using any illegal substances. He was in excellent health. That officially ruled out the theory of an accidental overdose. The medical examiner listed the cause of death as acute fentanyl toxicity. Still, at that stage, prosecutors weren't ready to press charges for a criminal act. 2. The public, Cory Richins was still seen as a grieving widow, a mother of 3. Handling the funeral arrangements and receiving condolences, all while preparing to claim substantial insurance benefits. But beneath that calm exterior, digital footprints were beginning to tell a different story. Cybersecurity experts analyzed her phone activity from the night of Eric's passing. While Cory claimed she had fallen asleep in her son's room, logs from her device painted another picture. Her phone was unlocked more than 10 times between midnight and 3 a.m. The exact window in which Eric is believed to have lost consciousness. During that time, Cory was actively sending and deleting messages, some of which were permanently wiped during those key hours. A major breakthrough came from backups recovered from her device. Music, investigators found an ongoing text exchange between Cory and a woman identified only as CL, a contact with questionable associations. Their communication dated back to late 2021. Initially, Cory asked for something to help with pain for an investor, but soon her requests became more specific. She asked for Michael music, Jackson stuff, a slang term referencing powerful opioids, including fentanyl. Those words weren't just idle talk. Bank records confirmed it. Investigators uncovered 2 separate $900 payments sent from Cory's personal bank account to this acquaintance. One was in December. The second was in mid-February. Just days before the Valentine's Day sandwich incident. Later, under questioning, CL admitted to supplying Cory with pills and powder, though she claimed she had no idea what the intended use was. The timeline was disturbing. Each financial transaction lined up with a moment of medical crisis in Eric's music life. The first purchase came just before he fell seriously ill during their trip to Greece. The second happened right before the sandwich incident that nearly ended in respiratory failure. And the third, it occurred shortly before the night Eric died. The chain of events left little room for coincidence. What happened next only deepened detective suspicions. The very next morning after Eric's passing, Cory called a locksmith to break into the family's home safe. The technician later told investigators she seemed agitated, rushed him constantly. Music. What she didn't know was that Eric had recently changed the combination, effectively locking her out. At the same time, Cory went ahead with a real estate deal Eric had strongly opposed just days before his death, the $2 million Park City mansion. She put the property in her own name and within weeks listed it for resale at $3.7 million. The final piece of the puzzle came from her search history. Despite attempts to clear her browser, forensic analysts recovered a list of queries that painted a chilling picture of premeditation. In the days leading up to Eric's death, Cory had searched for how music to calculate a fatal dose of fentanyl, what overdose symptoms looked like, and whether poison could still be detected in a body after cremation. These digital breadcrumbs drew a straight line from her intent to her husband's tragic end. 1 year later, in the spring of 2023, Cory Richins re-emerged in the public eye, not as a suspect, but as the author of a children's book titled Are You With Me? The book told the story of a young boy navigating grief after losing his father. Cory was featured on morning shows across the country promoting her approach to healing through what she called the 3 C's: connection, continuity, music, and care. She presented herself as a resilient woman who had turned heartbreak into purpose. The release date wasn't random. The book was launched on March 5, just 1 day after the anniversary of Eric's death. It quickly gained attention and positive feedback. Viewers were moved by the image of a strong mother of 3 trying to help others heal. But behind the inspiring message was yet another fabrication. Investigators found that Cory hadn't actually written the book. She had hired a third-party company, Bookwriting Lane, to produce it using a rough outline she provided. Her glowing review of their services was still live on the company's website, while Cory gave interviews about preserving memories of loved ones. Law enforcement was finalizing plans for her arrest. The irony was, music striking. The woman being praised as a grief expert was about to be charged with causing the very grief she claimed to help others survive. By May 2023, music investigators had built a rocklet case. They had testimony from the person who supplied the substances, detailed bank records of the money transfers, toxicology reports, and a reconstructed digital trail from her devices. It all lined up, each thread connected. The illicit purchase of fentanyl, the timeline of Eric's declining health, and the final act on the night of his death. On top of that, investigators uncovered evidence of insurance fraud, unauthorized withdrawals from financial accounts, and attempts to rewrite Eric's will, cutting out his legal heirs. On May 8, 2023, Cory Richins was arrested at her home in Commas. She was formally charged with first-degree homicide, fraud, and falsification of official documents. The arrest sent shock waves through the community. Just days earlier, she'd appeared on television speaking about love and raising sons after loss. Now, she stood as the prime suspect in her husband's death. At the initial court hearing, her legal team requested that she be released on bail. The judge denied the request, citing the severity of the charges and the risk of flight. Cory was ordered to remain in custody at the county jail until trial. For the people of Commas, it was a moment of reckoning. For over a year, the town had mourned with a woman they believed was a grieving spouse. But now, they were forced to confront the possibility that behind the facade of a devoted wife and mother was someone living a double life. The media quickly split into two opposing narratives. On one side, she was portrayed as a successful author and devoted mother dressed in soft pastels, radiating grace. On the other, she was shown in an orange jumpsuit, sitting silently in a courtroom, her expression blank, music, and distant. That stark contrast marked the end of the tragic accident version of events, and cemented the case as a criminal investigation. The legal process stretched on 4 months. During that time, prosecutors continued to present new pieces of evidence. Defense, music, attorneys tried to argue that the case was built on circumstantial details and speculation, but the bigger picture was hard to ignore. A toxic substance, a clear financial motive, and a disturbing pattern of events, all aligning around specific dates. The court ruled that Cory Richins posed a danger to the community and denied any possibility of bail. She would remain in custody until the trial. Today, the Richins family's life is in ruins. The family home is no longer theirs. Eric's once thriving construction company has shut down, and their 3 sons are now being raised by relatives. The book, Are You With Me?, which Cory once hoped would launch her as a grief counselor and public figure, has been pulled from shelves and scrubbed from online marketplaces. In Commas, people try not to speak about what happened. But the Richins name has become something of a cautionary tale, a symbol of betrayal, a reminder of how deep deception can run even in the most picture-perfect homes. The trial is ongoing and the final word in this case will be spoken by a jury of her peers.